Saludos. I am here today with José Ignacio Castañeda. Castañeda, that's a powerful, phenomenal name. Mi tocayo. Break that down. What mi tocayo means?
Yeah, tocayo, that's a funny word, and it's one of those words that I think gets lost in translation between Spanish and English. Probably the closest translation would be maybe doppelganger. It means somebody. It means somebody that has the same name as you.
Name, that's right.
And it's always an affinity, I think, whenever you meet somebody else, who's Latino, who has your first name or your first, and it's like, oh, tocayo, ¿cómo estás?
Tocayo, yeah.
So it's so funny. I know when we met, it was definitely like, oh,
that's right. Jose. And I love that, right? Because it's just one of those things, automatically we connect.
Yeah.
Like I have friends named Jose that we don't call each other by Jose. We say, hey, tocayo, what's up? You know?
Yeah, it's a different level of kind of affinity for people that you always have. Yeah.
We'll say, tocayo, Jose.
Yeah.
Who are you?
Yeah. José Ignacio Castañeda. I was born in Salamanca, in Guanajuato, Mexico. It's kind of the central state of Mexico there, and I lived there for the first 5 years of my life. And then my family and I moved up to outside of Chicago, suburbs of Chicago, a town called Aurora. And that's where I grew up for the majority of my life. There, we had my family was already there, grandparents and cousins and stuff. And we were kind of the only stragglers left in Mexico. So that's where I grew up there in Aurora. And pretty normal growing up life. And then I ended up going to school at Arizona State, studying at the Walter Cronkite School of Journalism, where I kind of got, cut my teeth a little bit and learned a little bit about the basics of journalism and that stuff, and then came out to Delaware and then so on and so forth.
Awesome. So tell us about yourself and the journey that brought you here today.
Yeah. About myself, let's see. I'm, right now I'm a reporter with Spotlight Delaware. We're a new nonprofit newsroom here in the state. We just started up in February. So we're, starting up. We're a new newsroom and stuff. But what brought me here today is largely because of that and some of the fun stuff that we got cooking up. But I started working at the News Journal at Delaware Online, covering historically excluded communities. Then I moved away for a couple of years, and I kind of fell into a job reporting on immigration and the U.S. Mexico border in Arizona. And then I moved back because of Spotlight Delaware. So that's really what brought me back to the first state after, covering those nearly like 400 miles of the border down there. And so, working with Spotlight, working a lot with the Latino community, covering a lot of issues, a lot of highlighting a lot of stuff. We did a story on La Esperanza recently. But, just a lot of different stuff that I think needs a spotlight on it. So that's right. Why I really appreciate the chance to be here and talk more about it. Yeah.
That's what's up. So local news plays a crucial role in keeping communities informed and connected. How does Spotlight Delaware aim to rebuild that bridge in a way that resonates with today's diverse audience?
Yeah, that's a really good question, Tocayo. But no, I think, it really starts off with how we were founded and why we were founded, which was largely because we were built on the bedrock of, hearing from the community. It started out with a survey that the local journalism collaborative kind of put together, local journalism institute put together to ask people about, what's missing from your news? What do you wish there was more of? Where are you getting your information? What would you like to see more of? And they really came back with, I think, 3 or 4 different pillars of stuff. They said, we want to know more about land use. We want to learn more about education. We want more about government accountability. So that's kind of what spawned Spotlight. Okay, we need this new news source that's going to be collaborative. We're not going to be in competition with other folks. We want to share our stuff, be collaborative to, benefit the entire ecosystem of local news here in Delaware. So that's really what started. So now we have a land use reporter and a government accountability reporter. We have an education reporter and somebody who covers, the Wilmington City Council. So, addressing those gaps, but not just saying, hey, we know what you want and we're going to start doing it right away, but actually asking folks about, hey, what would you like before we even set out and start, giving you your news and how would you like to receive it? So I think that has really bled into a lot of the work that we do, which is now, listening to the community and being community powered, which means, doing stories that come from the community that we get tips about. One of our signature events that we do is pop-up newsroom. So every month
I've seen that.
Yeah, it's super fun.
Yeah.
And it's something since the beginning. We were like, we should do this. It's like a really fun thing, and we get to work out of a different library, a community center, a public space where there's people coming in and out every day. And, once a month we go up and down the state. We did like a Lewis one, up in Dover and Wilmington. We did a Route 9 one. So just there, setting up a table, having reporters and editors there, and we're just working. It's just like a normal business day for us. So, we're fielding calls, we're writing stories and stuff. But people come in, and they're like, hey, what's Spotlight? Or some people, as we've continued to do them, have started to come like, hey, I saw you guys were going to be here.
Sorry.
I wanted to come and pitch you my idea that I had about, there's firefighters, if there's an issue in your community, or if there's just like, hey, why is there so much traffic? Or why do people not use this highway? And talking about that. So getting those stories and be like, okay, thank you. And then within, 1 month, 2 months, bringing back and saying, like, we investigated it, we wrote the story, and here it is, and it's going back to you, and seeing that kind of full circle moment of, like, being community powered and being community engaged and actually hearing from folks about what they want, while also addressing those needs that they first identified.
As I listen to you speak, there's just something so refreshing. And speaking for myself, over the past year, in the hustle or bustle, I'm working, right? You don't have time for much, but you guys continue to pop up. Everywhere I go to an event, I see you'll have a table. There's that friendly phase, questions being asked. I know that you guys were doing some surveys.
Yeah.
I just recently saw at Del Tech they were doing the land use, or it's coming up, or something like that. That it's impressive to see that I'm seeing the consistency.
Yeah.
Of you guys being out in the community. Yeah. I know that that's tough work, but for you yourself, what's keeping that spark?
Being in the community, I think it's a self-generating spark. I think there's nothing like speaking to people and getting to know people on a human basic level of just, being out there and saying like, oh, I'm also a reporter. They're like, whoa, I've never spoken to a reporter, or seeing people's faces when they come up to us at a library and they're like, oh, you guys are reporters? Like, you're the reporter here, like, doing your job here at the library, and you're talking to me, and I could just come pictures like, yeah, like, and breaking down those barriers that we may have seen in the past. So for me, I really enjoy talking to people. I really enjoy getting out there, and I think it's just a way to really keep it alive, to keep the journalism alive. But that spark is just the people, and it's really, for me, it's just, keeping it alive. And, we had the education event. We had one, Get Schooled, by our reporter, Julia Marola. And it ended up it was like a whole event about how to register your kid for school, how the whole choice process works, all this kind of information. And a few days afterward, we had, a mother reach out to us and say like, hey, can you help my daughter, who with her child, they're having an issue getting registered for school. Do you know how to navigate that? We went to the event. Can you point me in the direction? I was like, hey, Julia, like this, expert we have in-house, can you like help this source? But just the fact that somebody was able to reach out to us and say like, hey, like, can you help me navigate that? And, providing that information to people, which is, I think, what really keeps it going, just to have those interactions and to be able to provide that information to folks.
And you're seeing those, I feel that those are the things that keep the heat down, right? And when I mean the heat, it allows community to continue to thrive, right? Because yes, someone else can say, oh, well, you could have went here, but now this is another resource pointing them there. I like that. Another question for you. Spotlight Delaware highlights stories that impact people's daily lives. Can you share a story or an investigation that you're particularly proud of, and how it may, let me say that again, let me slow down. Spotlight Delaware highlights stories that impact people's daily lives. Can you share a story or an investigation that you're particularly proud of, and how it made the difference in the community?
Yeah, just from recency bias, I guess. We recently published a story about dreamers, or would-be dreamers, people who should be protected under the program, the Deferred Action for Childhood Arrivals. And we found this group of people. It took months, because we really wanted to start out with folks who were covered DACA recipients, and be like, okay, what's going on? Let's talk about it. There's an election coming up. I think there's a space for us to talk about, how people are feeling, what's going to be happening, and stuff like that. So it really set out since I started at Spotlight in February. And it took months of just like talking to people and interviewing people. And then we kind of followed the interviews and the facts where they led us. And it led us more to that there's actually a group of people who don't have DACA, but they should be protected. People who applied, they might have been rejected, or their application is still in limbo. They arrived like 2 months after the cutoff date. They arrived a month early, but they couldn't prove it. So it's about 900 people in Delaware who should be protected by DACA, who aren't. They've had to navigate, higher education, professional life, undocumented, and not be protected by this program, which may be coming to an end soon, with different court battles and a new administration, depending on, what happened in 2017 when they tried to rescind it the first time. So we were able to talk to a handful of students, a handful of professionals who don't have DACA, but, it's this kind of population that I feel like I had never heard about. I had never seen any stories about. It's always about people who are, protected in the program. How are they feeling? But we had kind of found this, the dreamers that DACA left behind, this post-DACA generation of folks who are vulnerable and not protected by this program. So that's one that I'm particularly proud of, just because we published it, I think, a few days ago. But, there's other ones. We did one actually on Latinos and dental care. So, just the lack of access to dental care for folks who are undocumented, for Latinos in general, and just, their access to getting that health care, but also, following up for general stuff and stuff. So that was kind of like an in-depth sort of investigation that we did. It also took a lot of time, but thanks to Spotlight, we were able to have that time and those resources to talk to folks. So those are just two. I mean, there's so many more that I could talk about.
So where can people go
to
find these stories?
Yeah, spotlightdelaware.org. And that is our website, and you could go and sign up for the newsletter. We publish 3 times a week right now. But yeah, that's kind of where we have all our stories, and that's where they live.
Awesome. As a journalist, you've seen firsthand how newsrooms across the country have been affected by economic challenges. What do you think are the biggest challenges in revitalizing local newsrooms, and how is Spotlight Delaware overcoming them?
Yeah, that's a really good question. The $1 million question for newsrooms across the country, and having worked in a few myself. I think the first one is sustainability. It's how do you do the good work and keep it sustainable, keep the lights on, for years to come. So I think that's one of the things that just has been plaguing newsrooms and, everybody. Like, how do you keep this going? Sustainability, how do you fund it? Who's funding it and stuff like that? So on that end, I think Spotlight's doing a great job. I mean, from the jump, we've had, really great large funders who helped, that seed money to help us launch. And then now we're being contributed by, smaller funders, members, people who are contributing $5, $1, $2, $10, just to help keep the local journalism, alive and well in journalism in Delaware. But I think that's one of the biggest things. There's no shortage of amazing reporters across the country. But obviously, burnout's a very real thing. So I think just in the industry and stuff, and maintaining that and maintaining a good work-life balance, and making sure that you could still do these really awesome stories, these really, really powerful journalism and reporting that we're able to do, but also maintain that balance. So people aren't burning out and leaving and stuff like that. But I think sustainability is the number one. But I think Spotlight Delaware is doing a great job of it. And I thank God for the great team there who was able to, fundraise and talk to folks and talk to donors. So,
and some of the things that I've seen that you guys are doing creatively is also the podcast. Talk to us about the podcast.
Yeah, the podcast. Yeah, it's run by David Straley, our Director of Community Engagement. And yeah, it's a fun podcast. So David chooses, I believe, one story every month or maybe every 2 weeks. And we kind of delve into it, and it's called Beyond the Headlines, and it is a way for people to kind of get a sense of what goes beyond the curtain, the great Wizard of Oz, what happens behind the curtain, what are the mechanics of stuff for the stories, for the reporting. And a lot of it is, really in-depth stories that took a long time, or really interesting stories that took us, I believe one of our reporters, Nick, went, fishing in the inland bays for one of the stories. So it was like, what was it like spending a whole day with a source out on his boat in, clam fishing and stuff like that. So it's just stuff that, folks wouldn't really see, or you wouldn't really hear about in the story, because it's like stuff was left on the cutting room floor.
Behind the scene.
We weren't able to include every interview. I would love to make every story 5,000 words, but there's little nuances or little things that we're like, oh, that's really interesting, but I can't put that in the story. But that's kind of what the podcast is about.
So now that you share that behind the scenes stuff, can you share with me what comes to mind of something really exciting and funny that it was not translated into the story?
Any story in particular?
Yeah, any story in particular.
That's a good question. I'm trying to think of something funny or something that was never translated into the story. Oh man, that's a good question. You got me stumped.
Think about it. We'll come back to it.
We'll come back to that. Yeah, okay.
For those who may not be familiar with Spotlight Delaware, how will you describe its mission and impact in just a few sentences?
Yeah. So Spotlight Delaware, nonprofit, collaborative, community-powered newsroom. It is established to really help the entire ecosystem of local news in Delaware. We are collaborative, so we partner with different newsrooms, and they use our stuff, and we are able to, get some our name out there. You know what I mean?
Yes.
Like people see like, oh, it was Spotlight. Okay, I could go to their website and check out their news and stuff like that. And we are meant to help fill in some of those information gaps to help Delawareans, navigate their lives and be empowered through the independent journalism that we give them, but also, be empowered to take action. So in most of our stories, we include a call to action. So that's something to get involved in the process. Maybe don't just read the news. That's something we heard from folks that are like, I want to do something, but I don't know. There's no call to action. There's no way for me to see like how I could, make a change. So for a lot of stuff we have, if it's legislation, call your legislator. If it's something else, it's like go to your neighborhood meeting. They're meeting, on Tuesday at 5 p.m. Go and check it out. And if you want to make your voice heard, please make your voice heard. Or sometimes we have like, here's a volunteer opportunities for, homeless services in Delaware. If you'd like to know more about them or if you'd like to volunteer your time, here you go. And we've actually had good, amount of people click on that and see that. So we always like to have that sense for people to take action.
Understood. The question for you, right? Sometimes we see that, I see colleagues, friends that, right, we become overcome with national politics, but how important are local news, focusing on, who's your mayor, who are your council members? How important is that to a thriving community?
Extremely important. I think, we could go back to the survey and see the findings of, what goes away when local news goes away. And it's not just a source of information. It's, voting participation goes down. That sense of community goes down. I mean, you don't know what's going on with your local council people. You don't know what's going on, with your mayor. You lose that sense of what's going on, and you lose that sense of accountability and just information in general. So I think, having local news is just extremely, extremely important, and having that is just at a local level, speaking about politics, I mean, that's really the thing that affects people. It's really, what did the mayor decide? What did the council decide? What did the county council decide? And those are the kind of decisions that people will see kind of very day-to-day, changes in what happens in their lives. So I think it's extremely important to have somebody there at those meetings to say, like, this is what happened. We asked these tough questions, and this is what we found in our investigation, and this is how it affects you. I think that's even more important is for local journalism. National journalism, you could try to localize it and say this is how it affects you as a person, but with local journalism, especially at Spotlight, one of the guiding, North Stars that we've had is how does public policy, how does this big issue actually affect XYZ person living in Lewis, living in Rehoboth, living in Selbyville, living over here, like what does this mean for them? And that's also why we have different kind of like, why does it matter? Like, why should I care? Why should Delaware care? I think at the top of every story. Okay. So just kind of give people a little blurb about like how this affects you, this big, broad policy, this new state mandate. How does that affect you living in Georgetown? What does that mean for you, or why should you care about this specific community or this specific population that we're highlighting or that we wrote about? So I think that's really important to show like we're not only telling you this new bill that passed, but we're showing you how it affects you in your day-to-day life. Wow.
Yeah. Looking ahead, what are your hopes for the future of local journalism in Delaware, and how can the community members support Spotlight Delaware's mission?
Yeah, that's a really good question. Looking ahead, I want sustainability. I think I would love to see just thriving ecosystem of local news here in Delaware, and to have different pockets of news where everyone gets their news and they're all really uplifted by this, thriving local news ecosystem that's sustainable and, really engaged with the community and stuff like that. So I really want to see that, something collaborative and something to be able to help the communities first and foremost, receive information, be empowered by the information we give them, and to see that continue for years and years and years and years and years to come. That's really my hope for going forward. There's so many amazing journalists in the state, and I really, really, really want to keep working with them and have the chance to collaborate and see them at press conferences and stuff. So I'm really excited about that. I'm hopeful for the future of Delaware journalism. In terms of Spotlight, right now we're having a news match campaign. So I believe every donation is tripled. So everything that you give for Spotlight, your charitable donations is actually matched twice by this organization, News Match. So it's kind of triple. So you contribute $50 and it becomes $150 to help contribute, local news here in Delaware and support Spotlight. And that runs till the end of the year. And then you will become a founding member. I believe everybody who donates during this 2024, our first year, becomes a founding member of Spotlight. So that's a really cool title. I have it.
Yeah, I love it. I love it.
I love seeing my name like on the
That's
masthead.
right.
Like, oh, founding member. That's so cool. But yeah, or also, sign up for our newsletters and check that out. But then coming back to your previous question about funny things, there was one memory I have. It was reporting in I'm not sure if you're familiar with the Hilltop community, the Hilltop neighborhood.
Yes, I am. Yep.
In
upstate.
Yep. From upstate, yeah, in Wilmington. So I was writing a story about the Hilltop neighborhood. And, I was walking around. It's probably 4 or 5 times that I went, up and down the neighborhood. And I was like, I'm just going to go and canvas today and see who's out and about. And one of the first times I was walking around just trying to get a sense of the neighborhood because I was writing this profile about, it still is a haven for, new immigration. Mm-hmm. It used to be predominantly, Puerto Rican.
That's right.
Before that it was Irish, then it was Puerto Rican, then it was kind of Mexican, now it's Guatemalan, Central American, and people are just seeing, but it's always been the starting place for folks, especially, upstate. So I was walking around and I had seen this sign. I was like, oh, there's a sign. And right in front of somebody's house, right on their porch. I was like, I'm going to stop by. And it was a couple, an older couple. And I was like, I'm going to stop by and see what's going on. So I go and I'm like, hey, how's it going? My name's José Ignacio. I'm a reporter. And they're like, oh, hey. So we start chatting. We're just like, how long have you guys been here? And what was the neighborhood like and stuff? And then it's hot out. I'm standing, on the street and they're kind of sitting down. They're selling pincho, I think.
Yeah, pincho.
Yeah, so they're selling pincho. Yeah. And I was asking, oh, so what is it? And then I go to lean myself. I'm like, oh, let me go and just grab onto something. So I put my hand up on the railing, and the man's like, wait, do not put your hand up there, because he had a fastened machete there that he was sharpening, and when it came, he was sharpening a machete. He was sharpening it, and I had put. He's like, wait. Don't put your hand up there. You're gonna cut yourself. And I'm like, and you could hear it in the interview. I was like, oh, sorry. Yeah, but he's like, he was gonna cut the grass in his backyard. But before we were speaking, he was filing the machete, and of course the most accessible and welcoming person was filing a machete. So I was like, hey, So it was just a really funny moment that I was like, I probably can't put that in the story, but it was just one of those reporting things that is just really fun to go back to the office and talk to people about.
That is awesome. You just brought back so many memories for me. I've been in Delaware since '93, and I remember when I first moved here, I would, came from New York, Puerto Rican community, and being down here, you miss certain things, right? And I remember driving on weekends all the way up to Wilmington.
Yeah.
Just to go food shopping and just to be around those experiences,
Yeah, and I don't know what it was. I mean, maybe it was because it was such a heavily Latino neighborhood, but since the Newsroom, I've been wanting to do that story. That's been so long because I've always felt a kind of affinity, to that neighborhood of just walking around. It's like, oh, it's so comfortable.
Even
it's
the name is cool.
Yeah, the Hilltop. You know what I mean?
That's right.
So it was so comfortable and stuff. But yeah, even so, I'm always like, no, don't try those tacos. There's tacos in Newport. You have to try these. And there's this guy over here who sells them, and you have to try these, and they're authentic, and getting that back. So
even totally down here, you got some phenomenal. People say, hey, where can I go get some tacos? I'm like, well, man, there's some great places, but you got in Laurel, there's this little spot called Tacos Chabelitas, man. Actually, my team and Nielsen shaking our head. Whenever we find ourselves in the western part of the county, it's just like a pilgrimage now. We got to go have lunch at Tacos Chabelitas, familiar, phenomenal people, and amazing food.
Oh, my goodness.
Final questions for you, man. Why do you smile?
Why do I smile? That's a good question. it's hard not to smile when, you know, you're doing really good work in terms of the community and like helping people, and in terms of, you know, doing something you really love and being able to help people with it and being able to empower communities with it is really amazing, and doing something that's so exciting. One of the reasons I guess we could kind of touch upon it, it's, you know, Spotlight is doing, we're starting to reach out to, you know, Spanish speaking communities. So in the future, we're going to have, you know, around the new year, next year, we're going to have this new kind of recap, a weekly recap, really small, just something about like the stories that we published that week, but in Spanish. So it'll be
awesome.
Me and some of my colleagues, you know, speaking about like what's going on. But it's really about, you know, meeting people where they are. And that's something with a survey we recently did, was just, you know, asking Spanish speakers about like, where do you receive your news? What would you like to see? So it's just something really, really short, really quick, that is just very, you know, if I'm out in the field or something, I just take a video and be like, hey, like this is what you missed today. This is what you missed this week, and here's what it is. Here you go, in Spanish, in a way that you could receive it, you know, on TikTok or on Facebook or on WhatsApp. So that's really interesting. So that's a reason to smile. But I just really love the work that I do and the people that I get to work with and the folks that I get to talk to. So there's really never a reason not to smile.
You know, thank you. I've been really excited about what Spotlight represents, man. It makes me smile. You know, it's just refreshing.
Yeah.
To know that, man, you guys have been since day one been consistent seeking, you know, doing different events throughout the state, really listening and reporting and basing your reporting based on what you are hearing from the community's needs.
That's really, I mean, thank you. I'm glad it makes you smile. I'm glad it's resonating.
It does.
But yeah, I mean, that's something since the beginning. I mean, I think when we began, it was me and Carl Baker, and we had our editor-in-chief, Jacob Owens, and Allison and David. So we were a really small team in February. We started up, and Carl and I were the only reporters, so there was no shortage of stories to work on. But one of the first weeks, I was like, hey, you know, they're having the Guatemalan consulate is coming to Georgetown. And I was like, it's like next week. And I was like, is there any possibility that we could get like a tablecloth and tables and a whole tent and stuff and do this and have like cafecito and have like conchas and stuff for folks, and we could, you know, talk to them, see what's going on. And they're like, we haven't had we don't have a tablecloth yet, but yeah, we will get one. And then it was just like, boom, like in a week, it was right there. So we were able to be there before we even really had a strategy out for, you know, events and what we're going to be doing. So it was just me. And then Allison came by and just out there talking to folks as they were waiting in line. And eventually we were able to, I was there for a while. So, you know, I got asked with so many questions. I was like, I'm not with a consulate, but I do know, go scan the QR code. That's how you make an appointment. This is the person to talk to. Yeah, I was like, and this is how you do this. This is how you do this. Like, but I'm not affiliated with a consulate, but this is how you do this. And it's like, also we are Spotlight Delaware. I'm a reporter. And, you know, if there's ever anything you need, we're always here. So that was a really immediately, like you could just tell, like it was just a commitment and a consistency that has kept on, and hopefully will keep on for years to come.
Appreciate you, man. Appreciate the work you do.
No, I appreciate
what you represent.
Thank you so much.
Seriously.
Appreciate you. Thank you for having me on.
All right. Thank you.